Hello and welcome to the Philosopod, episode 6, with me, James, and with me today I have
Alex,
Beth,
Kane,
Rim,
Ryan,
Connor.
So we've got quite a full house today. Can you put your phone on silent, please? That's like last episode. And today we've got a conspiracy theory special hosted by Beth because she is a conspiracy theory nerd. And
That's
she's come with her tinfoil hat to protect her from the alien raids. No, I'm joking. She's yeah, okay. Would you like to begin and introduce what you brought today?
Yep, sure. So,
Just no.
I've got a couple of conspiracy theories ready, and then I thought we could maybe do like a silly one at the end, because why not? Yeah.
That's all real.
The lizard people were real.
I believe.
Yeah.
I like the one about Taylor Swift being a clone of a Satanist.
Yes. Okay, so the first one that I wanted to talk about is the Oak Island money pit, because I really like this one. But yeah. So there's Oak Island is in Canada. It's like a really small, there's a lot of different islands, and it's one of like the really small ones. So in 1795, there was a teenager, and he lived on one of the, and he lived on one of the other islands, and he saw weird lights around the island. So he got a boat over and went to see what was there, and there was a 13-foot small sort of pit. And
when you said 13 foot, I said dead child.
Don't need to clap.
So there was a 13-foot sort of depression on the floor, and so at the time it was there were a lot of pirates going around, and in that island and around the area, a lot of pirates went and buried treasure there. So the kid went and got his friends, and then came back because he thought there'd be buried treasure there. So they start digging and excavating because they want to find some treasure. And 2 feet below, they find flagstone across the surface. So they uncover it, thinking there's going to be something underneath, and there isn't. So they keep going and they keep digging, and they start getting like pickaxes and like really digging, and then they find that every 10 feet there's like an entire platform of like really heavy logs all the way across, and so they then take those out, continue digging, and it goes down for I think it's at least like 50 feet of every single 10 feet there's like really heavy logs, and on top of these logs at different bits they find charcoal, and they find coconut shavings, which at the time wasn't native to Canada, so it suggested that it would be pirates because they used to use the shavings of coconuts to sort of protect valuable things. So they thought there's definitely going to be something here. So they continue digging, and then they get to a bit and it starts to flood, and so they try chucking the water out and they can't get it out, so they leave it.
Doesn't someone die?
Eventually, I think at least like 6 people die.
Thanks.
And then one of the older boys buys the plot of land and continues digging. And there's they find through putting sort of, it's slightly later on, but they find by putting dye into it, at different points of the island the dye comes out, and so there's actually like a labyrinth across the entire island of tunnels that once you get past a certain point flood it so that you can't get any further, and people try really hard to, like, they kept trying to get the water out. They used like machine pumps, they kept breaking, and they couldn't get this water out easily. So then that boy stops, and actually at a depth of 90 feet before it starts flooding, they found a stone slab, and on it were really weird like inscriptions, and it wasn't in any language that anyone knew. It was like really weird, like dots and circles, and so eventually, like a lot later on, there was a lecturer in the 1860s. A lecturer used ciphers to work out what it was, and apparently he said that it said 40 feet below £2 million are buried. So people assumed that there was going to be money there, and so people tried every single way to try and get to the bottom of this pit. They built like a parallel, like a whole parallel, so they could try and go down and then get to the bottom that way. But even that flooded. no matter what they did, it just kept flooding, and it like was really, really difficult. And so they tried using like machines to get down, and like eventually like cameras and everything, and like really big like augers, I think is the word, like to like drill down. And then later on at the bottom they found, I think it's in like a sort of concrete almost like box, they found like a piece of parchment that had like VI inscripted on it. And they found like a ton of metal objects like crowbars and like gold coins and gold chains. And eventually I think they've got like almost 200 feet down, and still to this day people keep trying to dig. Like multiple people have died trying to do it, trying to get to the bottom of what could be here. And so people say if it was the 1765 and it was pirates, how did they have the technology? With our technology, we can't get to the bottom. How did they have the technology to go this far down, build all of this, have like tunnels excavated like all around the island to flood it perfectly so people can get to the bottom? So some people, there's sort of different theories about... Has it stopped working?
No.
What was that face? So there's different theories about either who could have sort of who could have created this money pit, and then some people say like what could be at the bottom. So some people that sort of are skeptics just say like it's a naturally occurring sinkhole and that the objects there have just been like washed there. But I mean, obviously I don't believe that, because exactly at every 10 feet there's, you know, like the logs and whatnot, and it just seems unlikely. The most common theory is that it was pirates, so either like someone called Captain Kidd was like a really well-known one, or Blackbeard, who apparently said that he had like buried treasure where no one but Satan himself could find it. So people assume that was him. Bit dramatic, to be honest. And then there's sort of getting more into conspiracy theories. People say aliens, obviously, which is the most realistic out of all of them, would be that it was aliens.
Sure.
So yeah, people suggest that it could be aliens that have got this there. So with that of who could have done it, at the bottom there's a lot of different people say might be at the bottom. I think some people do just think it could just be pirates messing with people.
Is one of them the Holy Grail?
Yeah, people say it could be the
love
Holy Grail.
I love that.
The Holy Grail
why
could be
did
there.
you, sorry, why did people start looking for this?
It was just that kid who happened to find it because he saw the bright lights. We went over and they assumed, because at the time it was really pirate, there were a lot of pirates. It was called like the golden pirate era or something.
The golden pirate
wait,
era.
have it here. It was something like that.
I reckon the
So,
professor...
The golden age of piracy.
What was the date in which the kids
So,
found?
1765.
What were all these lights then?
No,
aliens.
not. So yeah, that's where
Rave.
people get
It was a
the
rave.
aliens idea from.
I reckon the
Combine
professor
stuff.
professor in like 1800s or whatever that like
1860.
that like
Deciphered
yeah.
it.
I bet he just sort of didn't know what he was on about.
Apparently
He was
he
you
used
know
like
what?
a...
£2 million
There was like
down there.
there was like a
Let's get
code that
digging.
he used where like it did sort of explain it, but some people actually believe, some people say that it's an ancient Christian site and that he purposefully deciphered the stone wrong, and that actually the stone says, "The people shall not forget the Lord, the offset, the hardships of winter, the onset of plague, the areth, he shall
Do they
pray to
still
the
have
Lord."
the stone?
What language
yeah, I
is
think so.
deciphered from?
Why don't they decipher it again if they think
Yeah.
he's got it wrong?
I don't know.
That things like that you just feel
I
like...
think that's
what?
where conspiracy
It's a
theorists
whole
think
load
that
of
it could
baloney.
have, other people could have then come into play to
I feel like you need
because
to research this chap who...
I think
does
the
it give his
people
name
that-
and stuff? Like
the
you,
people that
you need to
I think
check
it
if he
did.
exists.
yeah, I'm pretty sure he does, but also it could be like, I guess the guy who owns the lot who owns that stone and gets to choose sort of
It's
what
just
happens
like
to it.
many conspiracy theories. You have like a professor at so and so university deciphered it and said lots of money buried
But
here.
I mean,
X
it
marks
says
the
40
spot.
feet below, but they went 40 feet further than that and didn't
Yeah.
find anything. So that's why I think some people think that it could just
It
be
could just
pirates
be
messing with
due to,
people.
like,
I think those kids.
But
were just
some
taking-
people say
them
that, like-
kids just taking the
And they're
mick.
still finding the wooden things every 10...
No, that stopped at a certain point where they got to like there was a big sort of section of like clay and then different
The earth dips
levels of.
down anyway. Like it could have just been like because it's not 40 feet below. It might be just because the earth had like shifted.
Yeah, but I
beneath
mean,
it.
at 90 feet below, they found that stone, and they've gone up to I think 170 feet. So
At that point, I'd be like, nah.
Haven't they spent
People
like so
still-
much money?
yeah,
on this, so
people
it's
still
not even
like
worth it.
famous people
Yeah.
still put
Stop
millions
hitting
of
the
pounds in
tables
to try
there.
and find what's at the bottom. But
Stop.
some people believe that there was the original scripture of the Bible there,
Oh yeah.
the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail.
Yeah, they think
some
the
people say
piece
like
of paper came from.
yeah. So some people say that the piece of paper
Elder
either came
Scroll.
from something Bible related, or then it comes to the other theory that I'm going to link into the other one. That people say that it holds at the bottom Shakespeare's true identity or the hidden works of Shakespeare.
Well, that's nowhere near as interesting, is it?
Wow, pirates
In
were like, you know what?
Shakespeare didn't even go to Verona, let alone Canada.
Yeah, Shakespeare in Canada.
If I dug
Yeah,
to
but
the bottom of that
pirates.
to find Shakespeare, I'd commit.
Some people say there's Marie Antoinette's jewels at the bottom. So
Okay.
there's a lot of people that think there's a ton of things. I think when I first heard of this on Ancient Aliens, the route that they took was that at the bottom there's the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail that was put there by aliens.
Nice.
That's their
why would
step.
So is that
I can't
the
take
one that
anything
you
on
believe?
Ancient Aliens seriously anyway, though.
I love Ancient Aliens.
Is that the
I
one
love
you
it.
believe then, Beth? There's the Ark of the Covenant because it's put there by
I don't know
aliens.
what I believe.
It's the
I
Ark
just
of the
find it
Covenant.
really interesting. I don't actually know if there's anything at the bottom. I think that it's a bit. I don't think pirates could have just like casually thought, you know what would be a laugh if we went like 200 feet
Yeah.
down and put all these like
I think they
really
had better
difficult.
things to do. than
What
that,
is the
like-
Ark of
Yeah,
the
that's what I mean.
With all these like
Um,
war
It's like-
things.
You'll
So
know.
in the Bible, well, have you watched Indiana Jones?
Yeah.
Do you know the one with the Nazis carrying the Ark and it burns their faces off?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I think
So
that's-
basically,
I
the
haven't
Ark
seen it
was.
for ages.
This has been a while. Was carried through a few of the holy cities, and it was from God. And someone dropped it, and they were killed instantly. Let's say, but it's a sacred artifact that supposedly holds a load of power, and I think holds someone's body, possibly. No,
Yeah, I think I have.
I can't remember.
I
It's
think
been
I
a
I
have.
while.
thought it was the Crusaders, isn't it? Or,
I will-
or
I will
is it something-
search
or
it
is
up.
it something to do with Mary Magdalene? Because everything has something to do with that woman.
It was the Crusaders. There were the Knights Hospitallers or whatever.
No, it was
Yeah.
I swear it was the
That was one of the
Templars,
theories that
and
the
they
Templars-
protected
Yeah,
it.
That's where they put
Yeah,
the
the
Holy
Knights
Grail.
Templar. Oh yeah,
It
this
was
is
them
it.
who
It
did
says
the
that the
Holy Grail.
Knights Templar were the ones that buried the Ark of the Covenant
Yeah,
under
There you
this
go.
pit.
Yeah.
That's sort of one of the theories.
yeah, it was their job to protect it, wasn't it?
Yeah, so then people
Apparently.
say that like they would have put that under there with all of these different
Aliens.
or aliens help
Yeah,
them.
you know.
What if like someone just like stacked a bunch of logs up and then like a bunch of like liquefaction and like earthquakes happened and they sunk down into the ground?
It doesn't
Yeah.
contain a
But
body. I don't know
what
where I got
about,
that from.
like-
It's a wooden box covered with gold.
It's probably
Um,
rotted away now.
No, but it's
Is there a
encased
bed
in
somewhere
gold.
that like
Oh,
holds
right.
a hand or something?
And it contains the two stone tablets that Moses brought down from the mountain with the Ten
Okay.
Commandments on.
Okay. Yeah, so that's sort of the theories.
Also contained some other bits.
Like some other
sandwiches.
Yeah, you know, just
Aaron's rod and a pot of
Aaron's rod. Hey,
and a pot of manna.
who's
Oh, I
Aaron?
love
mana
mana.
crystals.
I might get more rocks off to some mana.
Yeah, I think the bit to me that makes it seem a bit sort of fishy is like the tunnels with that flood it and how like
Because fish
it's-
go through there.
but like it's like loads of people have found it really hard to block them up and there's like so many different points of like this big island that it would have taken so much work for them to have somehow inconspicuously
But at the same time, like,
buried,
this
like,
is
done
right
these tunnels.
1700s, and then you
it could
go
have
back,
been before
Yeah, no, I
1765.
know. It's just like
couldn't it?
that's the sort of time they found it. Like you've got the Egyptians who made the pyramids, and even that's a bit fishy somehow. Like people say that.
But see,
So, like,
the
what's to
pyramids
say
took
that-
years and years and years and had like
did you hear about
thousands
that,
of
new
people.
chamber that's been
Yeah,
found
I
in the
did.
pyramid
It's
of
awesome.
Giza?
Yeah, they use like scanning technology and found like a
Yeah.
100-foot chamber above.
Yeah, and speaking of which, there was an article I saw this morning about a kid in Russia that's claiming he's from Mars. And
So, count on the
he's like,
Russians.
he's like never learned anything about the solar system in school or from his parents, but he's got like this university level knowledge of the solar system.
That's weird.
And he's drawing like completely accurate diagrams of the solar system and like parts outside of our solar system as well. And
So cool.
and he mentioned Giza and was like, there are even more things in there that you don't know about. But he's claiming that he's like reborn from an alien from Mars, and he's like, because that he drew like bits of the solar system you can't see from Mars, and he said, "Yeah, I saw these when I was flying around in my spaceship." It's all just so weird. It's all so obscure.
Hasn't grown properly, so he's actually been to university and learned all this.
Benjamin Button.
Maybe as a child.
Yeah.
He'd definitely get bullied if he came.
I mean,
like bad.
It's just so odd because he's never learned anything about the solar system from any external sources, but has all this knowledge.
There's lots of conspiracy theories that Giza is like a place of astronomy and it's aliens because it like aligns with all the stars and stuff and points polar north, but they could never know.
Yeah.
So
and then there's also the more obscure ones where people are claiming that all the pyramids are like landing sites for ships and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot like alien related.
No one of a professional nature seems to think that the Ark of the Covenant is at the bottom of this pit.
Yeah, no, I don't think
somewhere
that
in Europe or
does it even exist?
Southeast Asia.
Is there proof to know that these tablets came down from some mountain from God?
Not necessarily, but you know.
It's just people. I'm not trying to disprove this or anything, but in the Bible, people often spoke of things like tablets and stuff to then get people to be like, well, there's physical rules.
See, I don't think that the Ark of the Covenant's like hidden under there.
No.
I don't actually know what I think's at the bottom. But I think that there's
it's just a giant troll face.
Yeah, see that's I kind of think that's like kind of where my mind goes. The amount of effort that goes into it. Also like how with our technology now, like so many celebrities have put millions of pounds in to try and find out what's at the bottom.
It's like 2 million at the bottom. Why bother put millions in?
But it would have been 2 million back then. Yeah, so now I think I saw it would have been like 1,800 million or something, or like it was like a ton more like in today's money. But yeah, I think just the fact that every 10 feet there's like the logs show that it's like very premeditated, and also I don't understand how, so you know how you're saying about the pyramids and how like they are sort of like a phenomenon that was like created. However, they took like so many years and they had thousands of slaves working on them. This is a tiny little like island off the coast of Canada. If there was thousands of slaves like building these things, I'm pretty sure that somebody would have noticed.
Canada wasn't
that thing about how they built the boats.
But there were like people like just like in the surrounding islands, like people lived around there.
What do you think's there, James?
What do you think? What's your theory on it? Do you think it was just pirates or someone trolling?
Just one point. Did you know that there's a TV show of this?
Yeah.
Like Discovery, like they have like several series of will we get to the bottom?
Yeah,
no, probably not. Because you're going to try and squeeze out another series.
Is it two brothers that own it now?
Yeah.
And they're like digging away. They found like, I know there's like a marsh or something where they found stuff at the bottom of the marsh.
Yeah, like around it, they've like around the area they found other things.
I feel like it's probably just like some sort of possibly a building or something that maybe got. It could have just been like a building that got buried.
But that doesn't explain all of the different water like booby traps, tunnels that have been put into place.
It could have been like secret entrances.
But they're not. They're like tiny little tunnels that all filter out to different ends of the island. That once you bury past it start to flood with the tide from the sea.
Someone, maybe pirates, had some treasure and they were like, you know what?
But who buries it and like further than 200 feet below the ground? If it's just like a casual little like treasure.
No, but because they put traps, they didn't want people getting to it. So maybe it was it was like a cursed object or cursed.
There was also a thing that like they put like some sort of layer of like I think it was like sap or some sort to try and like stop the water then getting down.
I'm really sorry. Can you just recap what I've missed?
You're not very much, it's fine.
I reckon it's probably like an object that they believed was cursed or something, and they wanted to get rid of it and not let anyone else get to it, so they buried it. Somehow.
So like if a pirate found something cursed, they'd probably want to sell it on though.
But
rather than being Mr. Moral,
maybe
it wasn't a pirate.
Pirates would probably use it to like conquer. They'd be like, look, I have this curse thing. Everyone should follow me, and then everyone would.
If it's got those layers of like wood or whatever going down, and then it's stopped up like 90 or something meters. You think that like maybe that was it? Maybe that was where they had the treasure, and the treasure's just done its thing and gone down into the lava abyss.
But it's like continued further down with different layers of like soil and clay and whatnot.
Well, if you're saying though, because people don't actually know what the writing or the inscription was it stone?
Yeah, it was on like a stone tablet.
For all we know, that is actually what they hid down there, and that's all it is.
Yeah, I just can't see them doing that though. Like, what was it going to say?
And they
about
do
that?
continue stuff like further down
What
after
was it going
that.
to see?
So.
Like,
Well,
the
thing
Bible
is,
was a
there
joke, we
the-
made it up. Lamau, the Pope.
Well, there was like you were talking about pirates and saying like they'd more than likely sell out on a try and con people, but pirates were really superstitious and they believed in curses and were terrified of curses. So if it was something they believed to be a curse, they would have likely buried it rather than sell it on.
I would say
It seems like a lot of effort for them to go to bury it though. Like,
but they would-
especially
Well,
on
it was
some, like,
a
secluded
very
island.
superstitious time. If you think, I know you're saying this is 1700s?
1700s. Yeah,
I've
that's
got a
it.
picture of a tablet.
1600s is when you had, Shakespeare, Macbeth, whereas everything was superstitious, and even carrying through to the next century, everyone was still superstitious.
Yeah.
So it is understandable why they would go to that length to hide something.
Still seems like a lot, especially with like technology they had at the time.
I
It
would say on
taken a lot of
Google
work
Images
to
there is
do it.
not a lot of pictures of the
They were
stuff that they've
terrified.
excavated from there. So
Yeah, there's not a ton.
So I'm so sorry.
there could be a conspiracy theory where they're making it all up. These brothers, just want money from
Could
the
have
TV
been.
show, and they're just
No, but I mean,
pretending.
it just doesn't make sense why those kids would have gone there in the first place because they were kids. Like they didn't have anything better to do.
Just the Minecraft picture.
But like, it doesn't make sense that the kids would have then done that. And like the oldest, like actually spent like his money buying the land and like went bankrupt trying to find what's at the bottom. It really doesn't
I'm
seem.
pretty sure they're not making
People
much money out
died
of it.
to like dig it. Like it just seems slightly unrealistic that somebody would have just been like, you know what, it'd be a laugh. But yeah, actually, since we haven't got a ton of time, linking from this one to the next conspiracy theory that I think has slightly more evidence is that Shakespeare was in fact Sir Francis Bacon.
So did
I don't know
Shakespeare
Sir
exist?
Francis Bacon.
I've heard this one before. I can't
Did he
remember.
invent
It's
bacon?
Did Shakespeare exist?
Yeah, brilliant.
Do we exist?
Do we?
We just made up to
Joke,
start.
mate, that's the joke.
Okay,
Sir
so
Francis Bacon was the captain of the Golden Hind.
he did like a
yes,
lot. He was like a lawyer, a philosopher, an essayist, and a scientist. He was like, and he was very high up. He was like an aristocrat. So the sort of
The big deal.
the evidence that Shakespeare wasn't in fact who he said he was. So it says that like that's like part of it. And they don't like the only stuff they know about him.
It's the owner of Oak Island. Sorry.
The only stuff that they know about him is sort of like they have like some tax records and some like a birth certificate and a marriage certificate, and that's kind of it. So he lacked education and like aristocratic like sort of
Is this Shakespeare?
sensibility.
Sorry.
Yeah. And he didn't have any familiarity with the court that's like shown through his work, and so there's like all of this stuff as well. There's a lot of later on it says there's like a lot of sort of words relating to law and like a lot of laws that he would have to have done like a ton of research to know anything about. In addition, there's like no documents to say that he had any education, even though at the time not a lot of people that got education were documented. However, he was also brought up in a literate household because we know that from his parents' marriage certificate. If you were illiterate, you would stamp it instead of sign it, and theirs was stamped because they were illiterate. Also, his two daughters were illiterate. So
He didn't
Just
care about
selfish.
education.
he either did, but if you're a playwright
Yeah.
that's like writing about, he wrote all this stuff about like how
Maybe he
like
spent so much
literature
time-
will like live on through time and I can make you immortal through literature, and he doesn't bother to
He spent
make
so
his
much
kids
time in
literate.
plays.
It seems unrealistic. Yeah, so technically like the theory is that there was actually a person called Shakespeare. Also, his vocabulary from like his plays is calculated between 17,500 and 29,000 words. So if someone who was brought up in a literate household has no proof of education and his kids aren't literate, that's a hell of a lot, like hell of a good sort of vocabulary to have.
Hell of a good.
Hell of a good.
But
hell of a
admittedly,
good.
a lot of those words were words that he made up on the spot. And
Like
came
There's
up with.
also like
Strumpet.
evidence that like Sir
Strumpet.
Francis Bacon has like sort of
It's my
said like a
favourite.
lot of those words that Shakespeare supposedly like made up. So also there's like 6 surviving like authentic signatures of Shakespeare, and like all of them are like really not the same. They're sort of like really weird, like that. And
worth the
apparently
money.
people say they look like an illiterate scroll, so that's sort of how people have characterised
They're really
them.
bad.
Top left looks really
Which, if he
illiterate.
writes all of this stuff, you think he would have slightly better handwriting than that, considering he's written
It's
so much.
custom font.
You can
Um,
find a lot of
Microsoft
it
Word.
badly.
Also, when he died, his will was like really direct and had very little. it didn't mention anything about his 18 unpublished plays, any of his like books and poems that he'd written. He didn't mention any of it, despite being a really famous playwright at the time. And all of this, he just didn't mention anything to do with it about who it goes to. He only mentioned like his estate and whatnot. So then that's sort of people's argument as to why Shakespeare wasn't actually Shakespeare. So then the argument that he was Sir Francis Bacon is that Sir Francis Bacon was a lawyer, a philosopher, and an essayist and a scientist. So he was a lot more likely to have the vocabulary and to be able to have written all of this stuff. He also did write a lot like that he didn't publish, and there's a lot of similarities. There's over 4,400 parallels between Sir Francis Bacon's writing and Shakespeare's writing. One of them's Sir Francis Bacon wrote, "Poetry is nothing else but feigned history," and Shakespeare wrote, "The truest poetry is most feigning."
But if you're saying that he's got all these titles, he was a scientist, he was, whatever, then why would he not take this extra title?
See, because he was brought up in sort of like royal parentage, he was really high up. Yeah. At the time, you were really lowly if you were sort of like actually like published these plays and sort of like went and like got peasants to watch and all of that. And so he had all of this money and wealth and everything. Why would he sort of be a playwright? And it would really be looked down on by the court. Also, he has all of like he's a lawyer, so he has all of that sort of background that then is shown through Shakespeare's plays, as well as all of the information about the courts that is shown through his plays. Also, it's like said that Sir Francis Bacon said about how he thought the best way to sort of teach people and to get people literate was through the arts and plays, and that he thought that was how he was like he really liked philosophy and stuff like that, and he was very much on wanting to get people literate, and he thought you did that through entertainment. So it would make sense that he would find somebody to sort of get these plays out to the lower classes, to then sort of get them interested in learning about philosophy and life and whatnot. So does anyone have any opinions on whether you think...
I'm glad there's some evidence for that one. Like, it makes more sense.
It's a very valid theory.
Do you think
I'm
that
just
it's
ashamed that I've been like so pissed off at the wrong bloke for all this time.
Do you think that it's just like Shakespeare is Shakespeare, whatever?
I never thought
Shakespeare
was Shakespeare.
Oh.
The moment
I just think he's not real, just made up.
So who wrote it then?
Some guy, but
Some fella.
There's also a lot of people. There's also like another like 5 people that people think that it could be, but I like the Sir Francis Bacon one.
It was that guy who saved his diary.
Something like that.
Samuel Pepys.
Oh, Samuel
Yeah.
Pepys, yeah.
I swear one of them is that it was
I think there's quite a few that people sort of theorise.
They didn't think of from the time. They're like, no,
It was this guy.
I have a few Shakespearean insults that I just and they're great. Away, you starveling, you elf skin, you dried neat's tongue, balls pizzle, you stop.
Balls
Away,
pizzle.
you 3-inch fool. Go prick thy face and overread thy fear, thou lily-livered boy.
That sounds like,
No,
that sounds like a really educated
I'd say
bloke.
I'm the same as Connor, is that I'm not a massive fan of Shakespeare in general because I study English lit. So who do I get angry at for
Well, when you
just
do get angry,
producing
say,
these
I am
words?
sick when I do look at thee.
Why did you make eye contact with me when you said that?
Oh no.
Rude.
Peace, ye fat guts.
Why is it so important that Shakespeare was not? Because
It's just
I
a
understand the
theory.
importance of the Oak Island one, where it could be something really significant to everyone or some people.
Well, it's not the fact that it's like whether it's important. It's just some historians want to know if it was.
And also,
Shakespeare
he's
or
been
not.
really
Yeah,
influential
I'm sorry,
on
it is
literature
important. Like, I
throughout
don't
the
You've
like
got
the
to,
guy.
you've got to know who.
Whether you like
whatever
him or
it is,
not, he's been
but-
like the fact that he's still so famous today,
You've got to
and he's
credit
really
who's-
affected a lot of people, especially literature-wise.
I don't like
And so
him,
many
but-
words and names in the English language now would never have been there without whoever Shakespeare was. Yeah, Shakespeare. Quotes.
Ryan's a very bitter young man. That's why he only speaks.
What's
like,
your
very
opinion,
occasionally.
Ryan? Because you seem slightly more conspiracy theory orientated.
I've looked upon this theory that Shakespeare,
I have gauged upon it.
I've quenched my thirst of
that
conspiracy.
Shakespeare wasn't real,
Yeah.
or just made up.
Yeah.
First of all, he never went to school, which is
That's weird.
For an illiterate person,
Yeah.
wouldn't make any sense.
It's
There was a Shakespeare at that time, but I think that whoever wrote these stories or plays used that name just to.
It was like a ghost
Yeah,
writer.
I
Perhaps he
agree.
was an alien.
A
Aliens.
pseudonym.
It was aliens.
Another alien.
Yeah.
Aliens wrote Shakespeare and then got some kid to write it.
Somewhere in Russia, there's a teenage boy with really extensive literature knowledge.
I think that's. Yeah,
They're
that's
all in
the
Russia.
true Shakespeare.
Hey, what's wrong with the Russians? They're either like ridiculously extreme football hooligans or the smartest people in the world.
Same with England.
No.
No, we're just
Think-
What did he do?
hooligans. Hooligan.
What's going on, Alex?
Alex is showing a horrible article about a cat being blown up with fireworks. It's horrible.
Oh
the image
no!
of having fireworks strapped to it in this
Oh
cell.
no, that's horrible!
Is that in Ipswich?
Ah.
Well, thank you for listening to episode 6 of the Philosopod. Thank you to Beth for bringing in information. She actually came prepared this week. Which is more than I usually do.
Stop doing that!
Backhand
It's really irritating.
But thank you for listening. Please email us at theflossapod@gmail.com and listen to us on SoundCloud at the Philosopod. So peace out, my dudes.
Connor, are you gonna scream?
No,
Ah.
no.
I can't bother.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching. Listening.
Bye.
Bye.